nature fans, and happy Tuesday. It's time for another hour of good nature. Um, we've got all kinds of things that have come across the desk over at Good Natured World headquarters over these last few days. Um, and I'm trying to decide what we should talk about first. Kind of thinking, since I've got a pile of visual aids here, let's start with this. Now, this is not new, but it is something I tote out usually around this time of year. Well, usually actually this time of year, and then around Halloween, because that's when people want to talk about bats. We're at the point right now in the bat's annual life cycle, which doesn't at all mean that bats only live for 1 year. Just talking about, what they do over the course of the different seasons. This is the time of year when their offspring, which are known as pups, are starting to hit the skies themselves. They've been weaned. They're mammals, so they're born alive, naked. Their eyes are closed, all that good stuff. Usually, oh gosh, when would that be? June, maybe later June, and then they are reared by their moms in what's called a maternity colony. Scratch that. If they are a colonial bat, which in our area is primarily the big brown bat. We also have it's actually a species of special concern, of conservation concern, the little brown bat. Those are present in our area in lesser numbers, but those are the two groups of bats that live in groups. And when we say big brown bat, I feel like we should put it in quotation marks because big is relative. This is a big, those are the Q-tips that are holding its wings out. This is a big brown bat. So here's my hand. Suppose I could get my lip balm out, but the hands are handier here. This is a big brown bat, stretched and dried for teaching purposes, such as this. If I hold it up here, can we see its little face? Yeah, it's not so bad. The Q-tips are distracting though, aren't they? So these guys, if you've got bats, in that are living behind your shutters, that are in your attic, and you find there's a group of them, it'll either be a maternity colony, or it'll be what they call sometimes a bachelor colony of males, although a lot of times the males just kind of strike out on their own. But we're seeing bats in greater numbers at this time of year because this is when the youngsters are leaving the roost and going out with mom. Now, if it's a colonial roost, there might be a few dozen bats. If the other part of the bat scene here in Kane County is what we call our solitary bats. And those are the bats that roost singly, usually in trees, in our wooded areas. The most commonly seen of those, and this is not a great representation because this is a freezer bat, and it actually looks small, but it's because it's frozen. And I hate to thaw it out because the more times you freeze and thaw, the less it just degrades the specimen. But a red bat is actually full grown, bigger than a big brown bat, but they do live alone, except for when they're raising their young. They can have litters of up to four pups at a time. Our big browns are usually, one, maybe two to a mama. So the big brown, or the red bat has a higher reproductive rate than the big brown, but since they live by themselves, again, we don't see them, in large groups. Um, I think I've got a picture in the slideshow too, when we start out. So we can see a better representation of the red bat, but they're heftier, wingspan of up to 12 inches, and a hefty body. They're somewhat cold tolerant. Now, all of our bats in this area do go into hibernation. And sometimes they will travel away to do that. They will migrate south, or and it doesn't mean like South America, and it doesn't really even mean oftentimes south like the Gulf Coast. It's just far enough south where they can find some suitable hibernating habitat, like a cave or an abandoned mine. Um, I've always heard that some of our bats around here might go to Starved Rock because there are abandoned mines in that area. And certainly we have abandoned mines in southern Illinois. But right now is when they are flying in the skies. They're fattening up to get ready for hibernation. And that's why this is also the time of year when I get out the bat detector. I have learned, I've had this thing for like 20 years. I know there have been a lot of advances. In fact, something I might give myself for Christmas this year or year future is an attachment for my cell phone, because technology being what it is today, there are some great cell phone add-ons that you can use to not only hear bats, but then also identify what you're listening to. This, by comparison, is pretty primitive. It was cutting edge in the early 2000s, but this will just take the sound that bats make, and it will modulate it down to a range where our ears can hear it. Bats, when they're, get our little demo bat out again, when they're out flying around, they are echolocating. They're sending high-pitched, really what amounts to screams. They're quite loud if you can hear in that range. And they send that sound out. It bounces off a bug. Oh, actually, it bounces off of lots of different surfaces, but their keen ears can decipher what that echo is telling them. Is that a leaf? Is that somebody's head? Is that a bug? And then they will fly towards that sound. This gadget, the Listen Up Bat Detector, takes that sound and modulates it, brings it down into a range where our ears can hear it. I might just put this on and leave it going over here. I've been seeing bats foraging in the neighborhood here around Casa Otto for the last, this is usually the time of night when I walk the dogs at dusk, and down to the south here at the Geneva High School athletic fields. Been seeing bats flying over there, and I'll occasionally see them too at the grade school that's at the other end of our street. And that's where I'll see one dip around through here. Now that the big old silver maple is gone from the backyard, there's actually more open space. Bats do, generally speaking, like to forage in areas where it's open, so that there's less chance of getting echoes from tree branches and houses, and instead catching more bugs, the echoes of more bugs. So open areas, over fields, over our community garden plots at the Park District. I would think that the river would be good foraging, but I've taken the bat detector to a lot of different locations along the river, and really haven't had that great of luck. Where I do have better luck is in the downtown areas, probably because of all the lights that attract insects that then attract the things that eat the insects. Before we move off of this topic, let me just get this out one more time. Um, this was, oh, it's like it's starting to loosen a little bit in its case. This was, I believe, a parting gift from when I left the Fox Valley Park District. Um, I don't know the species of bat, but you can see its skull looks a lot like the skull of, say, a coyote or a wolf. And it really is a miniature carnivore skull. They've got molars, they've got premolars, they've got canines, incisors, all the teeth you would expect to see in a meat eater, because they are essentially eating meat. The meat just happens to be, in this area, it's the meat of insects, of bugs. I had an email today from someone who said that they have a hummingbird feeder that is outside, and they've noticed that every morning when they go out, this has been, over the last couple of weeks, it's been empty. And this person also said that they'd heard that there are bats that feed on nectar, and that is true. However, nectar feeding bats aren't part of our bat scene here in northern Illinois. We've got, throughout the state, we've got, I think, about a dozen different species of bats. Here in Kane County, it's the big brown bat, the red bat. The hoary bat is present in some numbers too. The hoary bat, Hoary, named for the white, kind of like frosting on their dark fur, like hoarfrost. That's another solitary species. Those are kind of the big three. If we've got some little brown bats in places, that would be fantastic. But again, their numbers are down. But then throughout the state, we've got a few other different types of bats too. Neighbor's dog. But where was I going with that? Oh, the hummingbird feeder. So yeah, we don't have any nectar feeding bats here. Southwestern United States, yes. And then those species extend down into Latin America and South America too. They will, and those are the bats that are good pollinators too. They will feed on the nectar of flowers, and in the process exchange pollen as they go from flower to flower. All right, I'm gonna bring it up one last time just because another really cool bat fact just popped into my head. Can you see those bones that make up the wings? Do they not look like a hand? Oh, I'm getting a weird reflection there of my face in the bat case. Let's do that. So those bones in the wing give this the order that bats belong to, the taxonomic order, it gives them their name, Chiroptera. So hand, wing is the name that's given to them, and it really does. Those wing bones are fingers, and then up on top, this is you can barely see it there. They've got like a little thumb, and they do use that if they are moving around. They can use the thumb that's up there at the top of the wing. You can see it actually a little bit better on this specimen here. See that little claw right there? And they will use that to move along a rafter or, siding or wherever it is that they happen to be hanging out. There's a little bit more that we're going to talk about with regard to bats and insectivores, and that has to do with some texts I received today. But before we move on to those pictures, I'm going to pull out this creature here. Smooth and again, this is another freezer specimen. True confession, this is not the one I was going for, but I don't know what happened to the other one. I thought I had two in the drawer of the freezer. This is a shrew, and the shrew is like the terrestrial cousin of it's a different order, so they're not that closely related, but shrews do the same thing, perform the same ecological role as our bats do in the sky. These are insect eaters. Wow, this one has really gotten flat. He was underneath all the butter. They are plumper in real life. But you can see the pointy nose here of this shrew. Ears and eyes are there, but very, very hard to see because these animals really rely much more on their sense of smell and the sense of touch that they get from the whiskers that are here on their mouth, on their head. If we were able to see the shrew skull, you would see that it is very similar in dentition wise to what we see with a bat. They've got everything they need to eat meat in the form of usually insects, although they will raid mouse nests and things like that too. They're handy little guys to have around. They catch a lot of things. They live a much shorter life than our bats. Bats, probably because they hibernate, they'll go, we used to say 20 years or more. A lot of bat lifespans now are more like 10 years because they're eating bugs, and a lot of bugs have been exposed to pesticides. There's some habitat loss issues going on with some of our bats too. But shrews, they live fast, they die young. If they make it a year, they're lucky. They do not hibernate, so they will be present even on cold days. Winters, when we have snow, favor these guys a lot more because they can operate beneath the snow. There's a layer that is called the subnivean layer, where the snow, when it hits the ground, it kind of melts off just a little bit because the ground, it does hold some heat even throughout the winter time. And the shrews will, be moving around in that subnivean layer. But they got just a tiny little tail, not to be confused with a vole. A vole is not going to have a pointy nose like that, like this little guy does here. A vole is going to be more rounded, like I call them the baked potatoes of the natural world. These guys are pointier. They're made for hunting. I left the furry roommates inside tonight, so there's not going to be as much concern of having these visual aids get eaten as we move on. Let's go and segue over into our slides, and you'll see why some of these things are relevant here. Boy, it's a lovely, but look at how dark it is. I remember when we met, was it just last week? And we had some cicadas still singing at the start of the program. And tonight, just a week later, we're already surrounded just by the night sounds, ground crickets and such. All right, our obligatory St. Charles Park District ad. Let's start here. So I was reminded of this picture when I was at the Nature Center the other day. This was from about a year ago. This is a red bat that was spotted in the Hickory Knolls Natural Area. This is the characteristic resting pose of a solitary bat. So our hoary bats and our red bats, they hang upside down in a tree, usually out amongst the leaves, and sometimes they'll even hang by just 1 foot, so they dangle a little bit, and they'll sway in the breeze, and it really makes them look as though they are a clump of dried leaves. I keep looking. I would one day like to find one of these myself. This was actually some of our staff who found this photo, found this bat and took its photo, but there are other they are common enough that you should be able to find them if we look often enough. And so I just keep looking, So far, all I've been finding though are clumps of brown leaves, but that is why they have that reddish brown color, so that they will blend in that fashion. Now here, this, let's see if we can zoom in on this here. This was a text I got today. Is this a shrew? Yes, yes, it is. And it was poking around, as they so often do amongst wood chips. All kinds of things live in wood chips. You know, we've got millipedes in wood chips. There's all the roly-polies. There's oftentimes larvae of different types of beetles. So it's a very rich area for shrews to forage in. Tech support puppy, he finds shrews in my backyard a lot. I don't have a lot of wood chips, but I do have a lot of area that I don't mow. And shrews will patrol those areas quite regularly. And the person who found this shrew was like, well, why, you know, it just kept circling as if it was blind. It probably, you know, maybe lost its way just a little bit if they veer away from the scent trails that they are familiar with. Sometimes the shrew can get a little lost, but she said this one then scurried back into the deeper parts of her yard and went back about its business. So that was kind of a cool find, huh? Now this was a find that I made over at Potawatomi. I was heading into a meeting, but had to make a little detour because it's not a periodical cicada, but we are definitely in the midst of our annual cicada season. This little girl had found herself in the parking lot in the middle of a bunch of asphalt. She was laying on her back. It could be that she is near the end of her life cycle. This is an annual cicada. Again, confusing word. They live a lot longer than 1 year. The general range, oops, sorry, is 2 to 5 years. But once they emerge from the ground, so they're living underneath the ground, they're sucking sap from tree roots. Once they come up, the average lifespan is about 2 weeks. So it could be she was just, you know, nearing the end of that phase. Keep saying she. I did check, and we'll review this. I think we went over it a little bit earlier this summer too, but this area here is where she lays her eggs. There's a long ovipositor that's folded against her abdomen right here. I'm not exactly sure what this stuff is, this white. It wasn't wet, it wasn't sticky, it was just, I almost thought it was like maybe like a piece of fuzz, but it seemed to attach to her body. So I don't know exactly what it was. Maybe that's why she wasn't feeling so good. I don't know. But we are starting to see cicadas now that have completed this part of their life and are dropping from the trees, which then feeds a lot of things like shrews and ants and other things there on the ground. I also wanted to show you, so she's got her ovipositor folded down here, but all cicadas, male and female, also have this structure here, this other thing folded down. That is their mouth. That's the piercing and sucking mouth part that's folded down here in between the legs. So this is what they use. That was present even in their immature form underneath the ground. That's what they would use to stick into a tree root and slurp away at the sap. They will also feed perhaps a little bit less, but they will still feed as adults too, sticking that into the tender parts of trees. They don't feed on enough sap to really be damaging to the tree, but it was nice of her to be so obliging to let me take those pictures. I did put her up in a tree. She didn't seem too enthusiastic about climbing up it. So again, it could be she was just done. No, this is one of the streets that I was gonna say prowl. I walk. on my way to and from work. But what was new this week kind of caught my eye was this up here, this structure up here. It's a squirrel's nest, and it's much lower than we tend to see them. And I don't know why. I don't know what would cause a squirrel to build low like that. There are some bird feeders in some front yards along this street, so maybe this was just, a time-saving measure. Why go up high if you can stay low, save yourself some steps? I don't know. It was certainly, high. I would guess this to be maybe 10 feet up in the air. I was close enough that I could zoom in on it. It's very well constructed. It's not just a little feeding platform that like squirrels will sometimes build. This is a true ball of leaves woven together with twigs and such. I didn't have time to see any squirrels coming and going, but this is a time of year when young squirrels are building their first nest. So maybe this is a young squirrel, just hasn't, figured out that it's a little bit safer to be up higher. Maybe this is an older squirrel who thought, you know what? I'm tired of going up so high. I want, a house that's closer to the ground. I don't know. I'll keep an eye on it. If I can see who lives there, I will be sure and let you guys know. But it's definitely eye-catching because it is very low in comparison to all the other squirrel nests that we tend to see around here. And then I saw this, and this is just this is why a lot of our trees dry. When this tree was planted, I don't think the root ball was fully teased out. Maybe they left the burlap on. This can also be a sign that it was mulched heavily at some point, which encouraged tree roots to grow. And we've talked in the past about volcano mulching, and that's a real buzzword amongst the tree keeping community. When people put mulch at the base of a tree and they pile it up, I liken it to Linus's blanket in the Charlie Brown Christmas special, where he wraps his blanket around the base of the tree, and the tree all of a sudden, feels the love and is not scraggly, but it becomes, healthy and beautiful. And I really think some people think, well, I'll just pile this mulch up, just like, I'm tucking the tree in. But it doesn't bode well for the tree in the long run. These roots, they're not doing what roots need to do. Roots need to spread out, and they need to gather water and minerals from the soil. And these roots are just tangling and strangling each other. And it is kind of, I actually, and there was no mulch on this tree, but there used to be another tree in the backyard here at Casa Addo that it was a Norway maple. It was probably planted when the house was built in the 1970s, but I could see the roots strangling themselves. And it died maybe 6 or 7 years ago. It had been languishing for a while. So anyway, this is not good. If you see trees like this, wish them well. Maybe, but they're probably not going to last as long as a tree that's allowed to send its roots out over a greater distance. And yes, I said we were going to talk about a lot of bees. We've talked about bats. We talked about a bug. And then look at this, people. It's still happening. The butternuts. This one, did I zoom in on it? Yeah, it was pretty. This was after a rain, and it was laying with its the inside portion was up, and it had caught a little rainwater, and it this was in this same general vicinity. This was over on 6th Street. In fact, I can do a map here, right? Yeah. I know we've got some new folks tonight, but I've been chasing after there's a butternut tree here in this general vicinity where I live, and I can't find it. And what's bugging me is, but butternuts are a very unusual tree for this area. Not that they're out of range, but they get sick and they die before they're old enough to make nuts. And I found this one, this green space here, that's Baker Field Park. That's where I first started noticing them. Well, there and here at my house. And the majority of the nuts have been in this general area. However, this wasn't the only butternut I found. Stay tuned, because there's more. We'll talk about this in a little bit. Let's see, how do I make this go away? Turn it off. There we go. This is a walnut, so it's not a butternut. Butternuts and walnuts have a similar looking leaf. The nut, you can see here, the nut of the butternut is elongated. This walnut tree was not anywhere around here. This was over at Campton Forest Preserve. And it's, I'm trying to decide if we're going to have another big mast year or not. If so, this would be the third one in a row, and that would be unusual. Mast year is when trees produce big numbers, an abundance of fruit. And last year we had acorns, we had walnuts, we had hickory nuts, and I thought for sure this year the trees would be taking a break, but this walnut tree had quite a few nuts on it. It also, though, I don't know if you can see what's going on here. Did I zoom in? Yeah. This part of these twisting, twirling, what look like branches are not a part of the tree. This is Oriental bittersweet. And man, some of our preserves, this is Campton Forest Preserve, which is over in Campton Township on Town Hall Road. There was quite a bit of bittersweet, and it can, over time, it can break branches on a tree. It too can strangle a tree, not down at the roots, but up in the crown of the tree. And it's interesting, the growth habits over time. I've seen people cut this and use them, as a little art object on their mantles. It's not strong wood, and it doesn't tend to last over time. They do tend to get soft and break apart. But Oriental bittersweet is becoming more and more prevalent. It's right up there with honeysuckle and buckthorn in terms of being an invasive introduced species in our area. Oh, now this actually came in with the vole picture. I don't know, I guess I got it separated from the others. This is I'm sorry, not a vole, those shrew pictures from our friend Amanda. This is not a shrew. This is her other little neighbor. She calls it her friend. This is a woodchuck peeking out from some wood. I would imagine, a woodchuck, they're extensive burrowers, and I would imagine this is not the primary coming and going hole that is, it looks like it could, barely squeeze out of this. But she said that she visits this area frequently, and the little woodchuck always pokes his nose out. She said she's taken to dropping, accidentally, quote unquote, bits of carrot and things for it. But this is a great reminder about woodchuck's teeth. Boy, we're talking a lot about teeth tonight, aren't we? The woodchucks they're rodents. So they don't have the full dentition like we saw with our bats. They don't have incisors. I'm sorry, they don't have canines. They just got these prominent incisors. But woodchucks have white teeth, which in the rodent world is kind of unusual. Most squirrels' teeth are a deep yellow or orange. The beaver teeth are famously dark orange in color. For whatever reason, though, the woodchuck's teeth are this nice bright white. Yeah. Here's a nice different hue. This is blue, as in big blue stem, our state grass. It is in such wonderful color right now. This again was at Campton Forest Preserve, which also was the scene of this little encounter. This is a lip balm and a young turtle. I'm guessing this turtle is probably about 2 or 3 years old. That lip balm is 2 5/8 inches. The turtle was just about the same size, maybe just a skosh longer than the lip balm. And it was sitting, it was probably contentedly sunning itself until our walking group came upon it. It at first held its ground. It pulled into its shell. And then when it felt like it had a chance to escape, it poked its head out and started to head for the tall grass. So this is a painted turtle, which is one of our most common aquatic species in this area. We can tell it's a painted turtle from the relatively flat character of the shell. It doesn't have much of a dome to it. It's got some, let's zoom in on the head here. It's got some yellow stripes by the head, and then on the neck and on the legs, we see red, almost as if it's been painted. Now that colorful accent trend continues on the underside. The edge of the top shell, which is we call the carapace, that too has some delightful red markings on it. And then here in this part of Illinois are the species that we would expect to see is called the Midland painted turtle. And that is identified by this coloring here in the center of the bottom shell, which is called the plastron. The bottom shell marking varies with the subspecies. So again, Midland is the subspecies we would expect to see here. The Western painted turtle is also one that we see here. That one is often sold in the pet trade. It has some very bright, this red that we see on this part of the shell. The Western painted turtle's plastron has a lot of red and green markings, very boldly patterned. And I think that's why it's a common pet trade turtle, because of those pretty markings. Turtles, by the way, do not like to be on their backs. So we took a couple of quick photos, we put it down on the ground, and boy, this little guy made a beeline for the tall grasses that line the trails there. Just for sake of comparison, I threw in this picture of a Blandings turtle. I took this picture Saturday, was it Saturday or Sunday? I was at the Nature Center at Hickory Knolls, and we, as participants in the Blandings recovery program, we have several Blandings turtles in the pond that's in the indoor pond in the lobby. Look at the different shape of the shell. So it's got a much higher dome to the back of it. We don't see any stripes on a Blandings turtle. We do see this yellow chin. And I have to say the coloring the husbandry practices have greatly improved. When we first started keeping Blanding's turtles, they were blanding in color. They were bland. They were the bright chin, which is a characteristic of this species, was not very distinguished. It was kind of like an olive greenish yellow. But I think the lighting that we've acquired and also the diet. These guys are getting a lot of crayfish these days from the Rusty Crayfish rodeo that we held last week. But if you ever see a turtle that looks like this, please, please, please take some pictures and then let me know, because this is a species that it is endangered here in Illinois, and it is a candidate for federal listing as an endangered species. So the more we know, but pretty much all the ones in the wild have been recorded in some way. But if you happen to find one, snap a picture, get some GPS coordinates on it, and then let us know, because they are that there's that few of them around, that the biologists that are trying to help them need to know where every single one is living. All right, so let's go back to Campton. This was the scene, and gosh, I hope there we go, it will load. So this was the scene in that field of big blue stem and painted turtles. There's a wetland nearby, but we're seeing a couple of things here. We're seeing dragonflies. These were, for the most part, these were green darner dragonflies, and they're foraging. There were a few mosquitoes out last week, and so that's probably the main insect that the dragonflies are going after. But you see, there's some other things foraging there too. Those were barn swallows. Barn swallows will feed on mosquitoes, but I kind of have a feeling that maybe these barn swallows were attracted to the dragonflies. You may have heard, it was, I think WTTW did a report within the last week or so about dragonfly migration. And that's also what we're seeing here. Large species like the green darner, they actually will head south. And then another generation will reproduce down, and I've never found out exactly where south is, if it's the Gulf Coast, if it's far enough south where they can still fly around and catch insects in the wintertime. So it has to be, several hundred miles that they go. But they are massing. They use the strategy of safety in numbers. So and flying in big groups like this, even if the barn swallows find them, the barn swallows aren't going to be able to eat them all. And so it's a site. Actually got a text from our supervisor last week. He was leaving a meeting, an evening meeting at Primrose Farm Park up on Crane Road. And there was a group of migrating dragonflies there as well. This is butternut number 2. This was, there's a couple other things here to point out. This is right next to the grade school here, right next to Davis School. And it was right underneath an ornamental pear tree. That's another invasive species that we are finding that it is really starting to grow wildly out of control. The ornamental pear, sometimes it's called the Bradford pear. It was planted, it was touted as this, this beautiful tree that gets these white blossoms, and isn't going to be a problem, but those white blossoms turn into fruit that is a problem. It's called a pear, but the fruit, these are the fruit and these are the seeds The tree itself isn't very long lived. It tends to break quite a bit. And these seeds, the birds will eat them and then they deposit them in our natural areas. Some areas, along Peck Road, I'm seeing more and more of these pears popping up. But anyway, the butternut tree has to be somewhere close enough that it could, an animal could have dragged one or flown one, maybe if it was a crow, over to Davis School as well. This is the first one I found in that particular location. I find a lot over on 6th Street where that other one was, but this is the first time I've found one there, really, 100 yards from my house. So it's gotta be around here somewhere, folks. And boy, when we find it, you're gonna hear about it. I didn't realize I was gonna be on such an invasive rant this week, but I actually turned around and went back to take pictures. This is an amazing clump of common reed or Phragmites. This is there is a native form, but the native form is much better behaved than this introduced form. This is a wetland plant that seeds, as we see here, quite prolifically. What you see there in the background, that is Kesslinger, and this is the bike trail on the north side of Kesslinger. This is near the oh gosh, it's the big white church there at the corner of Kesslinger and Peck. Local folks, you can probably pick that up. Chapel Street Church, I believe it's called. And this is, I mean, I love the management practice here. They, these were towering over my head. I'd say they're 8, 10, maybe some are even 12 feet tall. But you gotta make the fire hydrants accessible, so they did weed whip around the hydrant there. But this it's kind of a pretty plant. I noticed that I was heading out to a program and saw it kind of gently riffling here in the wind. I don't know if this video is going to load or not, but you get the idea. It is so thick that it forms monoculture. There we go. There's the turf grass there along the edge, but this plant is really got a stronghold here. If you go just a little bit farther, this is looking to the east, and there is K. Lovett Park right over here, kind of a, for as much of a monoculture as we have here with the Phragmites, K. Lovett Pond over here, I've seen black crowned night herons over there, egrets, of course, great blue herons. But yeah, when something grows this thickly, it really, doesn't allow other plants much chance at all. And the key to life is diversity, and we're just not seeing that there. All right, we're going to wrap up with a couple more viewer emails, or actually reader emails. This was a series of photos that were sent to me by a gentleman this is actually a garden in Tennessee, but the gentleman who sent the photos lives up here. He reads the Good Natured column, and he said that his brother in Tennessee was noticing that something was eating his tomatoes. And he wasn't sure if these droppings were related, but he felt that they might be. He smashed one here to see what it was made of. He said it looked kind of like grass. But don't these look kind of like little berries, or like mini corns, or little hand grenades? We've talked, we haven't actually talked in a while, but we do talk from time to time about scat. And in this case, the scat the more accurate or correct term would be frass, because this is the product or the byproduct of a creature that eats tomatoes. Now you might want to say this is a tomato worm, but tomato worms and tobacco worms eat tomatoes. And in our area, the gentleman, the gardener down in Tennessee, all we got to see were his eating tomatoes and the frass that surrounded him. Didn't see the actual culprit there, but his brother, the one who lives up here, sent me this picture from his garden. I guess he started to notice those same sorts of deposits underneath his tomato plants. And here we have right in the center a tobacco hornworm. Now, how do we know it's tobacco and not tomato? I found this graphic, and I should have made note of the source, because it's well, maybe it is Colin Purrington. It's a handy little thing, and it's a goofy little, well, I guess he's calling it a mnemonic, but yeah, this works for me every time. Lucky Strike, I don't even know if they still make Lucky Strikes cigarettes, but Lucky Strikes translates easily to Lucky Stripes, and that refers to the markings on the side. What's a lucky number? 7. And let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then the tip, these are called hornworms, and the tip of that little spine there is usually got a little red on it, much like a cigarette would. So 7 stripes, lucky strikes, you're looking at a tobacco hornworm. Now, what we don't tend to see around here is the tomato hornworm, even though it's tomatoes that we usually find these caterpillars on. The device here is V8 juice, because those stripes, those markings on the side of this caterpillar look more like a V than a stripe. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So V8 is the tomato hornworm. Lucky Stripes, 7 lucky stripes, is the tobacco hornworm. And if we go back here to this, let's see if we can zoom in a little bit on it. Let's count, shall we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they are stripes or strikes. And I don't know if we can go in any farther here. There's a red tip, just like a lit cigarette. How about that? Now, I didn't plant any tomatoes this year, but I did have one come up here next to the compost bin. I must have spilled some tomato compost last year. And I don't know if it'll be enough to attract the moth. So this does turn into a nighttime pollinating sphinx moth. And it is blooming right now. I don't know if it's going to ever, because it came up pretty late. I don't know if I'll see any tomatoes growing on it or not, but I've been kind of keeping my fingers crossed, not so much for tomatoes, but maybe I can get a cool tobacco hornworm on those tomatoes that are the tomato plant that's growing there. So that brings us to the end of the slides, folks. Let's stop the share. And looks like we got just a single chat here from Laura. How's it going, Laura? Would a flying squirrel be
going better?
Yeah. Laura and I were talking earlier today too about feeling itchy. There's maybe this has been in the news now too, the cicada. They're blaming the periodical cicadas on these oak itch mites, I think they're called. And I don't know, because here we didn't really have much in the way of periodical cicadas, but Laura, you said you've got some itches, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. Uh, and I spent an hour and a half at urgent care because one of them looked like it had a, like the target pattern of a
Like a deer tick,
right.
right?
And I'm like, oh God, I didn't see
Uh,
anything, any tick engorged on me, and only to find out that, this oak itch mite, and I had several little bites all over me, and they are itchy.
yeah. Well, there's some sort of relationship, and I have to say I have not delved into it at all, but they're saying that areas that had heavy concentrations of periodical cicadas are having, lots of people having um, issues with these mites. And I don't know maybe it's, the way maybe what the cicadas did to the branches of the trees made for good growing conditions for those mites. I don't know, but I did feel like I got a couple weeks ago. I was at a concert in Wheaton, and over the next few days, I was kind of itchy too.
Yeah, well, I frequently sit in the grass and weed the borders of my gardens, and
Uh-huh.
probably not a really good idea anymore.
Well, and I when we were texting earlier, I said I had an encounter with them a few years ago after a school program. I was over here at Haynes middle school and sat underneath an oak tree. And then, yeah, my neck, my wrists, like any exposed skin, was quite itchy. So I hope you're feeling better now, Laura. Did they give you
I
some
am.
cortisone cream or
No, and it wasn't the reason why I went was more the bullseye look.
oh,
I'm
right.
like, yeah, I'm like, I'm out all the time. And she goes, well, are you in deep woods? And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. But she goes, you know what, this is fading already. It would be getting darker. So, I completely agreed with her. I have no temperature or anything like that. But I did hear that a big problem is with the itchiness is that they get infected, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and then they can get quite nasty because if you itch them and then let in the bacteria. So otherwise, they're just annoying.
Kind of like chiggers, huh?
Yeah,
Only less
exactly.
leaky, but
Yep.
yeah. Well, glad you got it checked out. Glad it wasn't Lyme. I don't know where he got this, but tech support puppy, when I had his heartworm blood test this year, thankfully he doesn't have heartworm, but they said that he had Lyme antibodies. So at some
Huh.
point he had a tick on him,
Yeah.
a Lyme tick. So a deer tick. So yeah, it can happen. And it's weird because I never take him. He doesn't go to work with me. He doesn't go out in the woods with me. It's just, here in the neighborhood. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
hurts to check things out. I'm glad you did.
Right. Exactly. It made me feel better because I'm a worrier and I know I would worry
While you're
down the
itching.
road. Yeah. Now you're itching. Sorry, Pam.
Oh boy. Well, your point here, Laura, about would a flying squirrel be interested in the sugar water and how many I never thought of that, but I bet you're right. I should write. So what I said was that it could be raccoons. So when they drink, I mean, a lot of times they wreck whatever it is that they go after. I know we used to bring our bird feeders in at Potawatomi because the raccoons, they wouldn't just like daintily eat the seeds. They would wreck the feeder. Um, and this feeder doesn't sound like it's sustaining any damage. So I'm gonna find out if they have that sort of habitat, if they have some oak
Yeah.
trees or, you
And
know,
they are nocturnal. I mean, so
yeah,
eh,
yeah.
yeah, well,
Good thinking.
I had a flying squirrel scare me half to death about 10 years ago when I went out to put something in the compost pile and saw something hanging from my bird feeder, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's a flying squirrel, you know.
Right over
So
at your house?
yes, but this was about 10 years ago, so I don't know if it's still around.
That's so cool though. Um,
Yeah. Well, the great big sugar maple, or excuse me, silver maple that was there, and there we have a lot of other mature trees around in the area, but the silver maple, like yours, is gone. So I don't know.
um, yeah, well, but there, there are some, you know, nice tree cavities still existing in the area. I'd like to think we still have. I know, like some of the people that live near Delnor Woods, have, complained that our flying squirrels are getting in their attics. And I just figured that, that it was that more, the oaky, acorny, um, woodsy type of habitat that they were there for. But bird feeders work too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we used to we they're around the wild rose area too, just because of there's more
Sure.
mature trees there too. Yeah.
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 Yeah. They're I would love to think that there's some around here. But yeah, I
You
will
need
suggest that, Laura. Thank you for mentioning that because
sure.
I did not connect that, but overnight, and then the fact that the feeder isn't trashed,
Right.
little flying squirrel could certainly do that. So yeah, if they come right back to me with what their habitat is, maybe we'll bring that up again.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Laura. Folks, we're a little bit past the witching hour. It's 9:06. That means it's bedtime. Appreciate you guys hanging in there these last few minutes and for the last hour. I was gonna say see you next week, but next week is a bye week. We will be off, and we will reconvene in the month of September. Can you believe it? Till then, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Have a great Labor Day, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you, Pam.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, Pam.
Yeah,
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
thanks, everybody. Oh, there we go.